Good morning, Gamecock fans. Today is Friday, April 11th, the year of our Lord 2025, and you are listening to Coffee with JC Shurburtt. I hope everyone is going to have a fantastic Friday. I'm sure many of you are going to take in the Masters on television or have a Masters weekend, and that's outstanding. JB later today on the morning show will have Meredith Taylor, former Gamecock golfer. And Meredith actually got to go to Augusta. She's been many times. She's a big, what I would call a necessary expert, a must listen when it comes to that stuff. She's really good at breaking it down. Certainly, also her company, McKellar Enterprises, sponsors our guest line each and every day on the shows. When we have guests, we don't have guests here on Coffee, but we have guests on the morning show and the show from time to time, and certainly we appreciate her sponsorship and working with her as she's built a fantastic business, and always good to see a former Gamecock do well. I kind of like to see everybody do well, regardless, but it's always extra special to me when one of the Gamecocks does, you know, built that thing from. I mean, she just kind of started it out of nothing. She's like, I'm going to go start a business, stay involved with the sport of golf. And she's helped so many people really improve their game. So, hopefully when I move back to Columbia, myself included, I'm gonna fix this golf deficiency that I have. Because I do enjoy playing. I don't always watch, but I enjoy playing. I probably watch more if I actually played, but just not very good at it. And because I haven't really done it a whole lot, I haven't picked up a club really since '04. That's about 21 years. Seems like yesterday, but I'm going to get good at golf when I get down to where the weather is. You can play most months out of the year, and probably enjoy that as I launch into senior citizenship. I think that would be a lot of fun. So anyway, highly recommend her, and she's going to be on the morning show later today, along with Stuart Lake, who's from in College Station. And man, I feel pretty terrible for him and Derek and the team. You go all the way out there, things start well. There's a complete meltdown with a bunch of walks and a grand slam. So immediately you're behind. And so even if you play pretty well the rest of the way, the scoreboard indicates that you're tied and not ahead. You go to extra innings and you lose it. So I just, and then I had a chance to score in the top of the 10th, couldn't do it. And it's just it's frustrating. It's frustrating when you lose big. It's frustrating when you lose small like that, especially when you need it, and especially when you're playing a team at A&M, immensely talented. But I think we saw last night they don't always play like it. It was a very good baseball game. I thought very competitive, but yeah, it sucks. There's no other way around it. 8-7, you're down to 2-11 in the league, staring 2-13 for the first 15 games in the SEC in the face. And oh, by the way, 0-4 against North Carolina and Clemson. So you're staring a 2-17 record against teams that, the competitive teams on the schedule. It's hard. Baseball, you could talk about the Power Four or whatever. Quad one, I guess, because they do use quads in baseball. So that's not good. Softball is 31-8, number 10 in the country. They play number 12 Arkansas in Fayetteville. Saw the picture on social media where they're hitting the plane and getting out there. They're 6-4 on the road this year, 25-4 at home, 31-8. Did I say 31-6? 31-8, 6-6 in the SEC. It's this league thing. It's very tough. But another big series for Ashley Chastain Woodard and company. Tonight's game's on SEC Network Plus. I believe it first pitch is at 6. I'm sorry. Baseball tonight is at 7, and the Gamecocks. And if these times, the official site I think always renders to Eastern. But if I'm wrong about this, then I'm getting the central time zone for whatever reason on my computer that I kind of do work on and don't broadcast from or record from. It's always Eastern, but Unfortunately, if I'm wrong about that, just don't shoot me. Don't get me on that. But yeah, baseball tonight is at 7 Eastern time, apparently. It's yeah, I'm sorry. Eastern time. All right, let's reset here, JC. Last night was on ESPNU, Lowell Galinda. I hadn't heard from him in a while since he went to the Longhorn Network, right? Which tells you a lot about the Longhorn Network, but there's no more Longhorn Network. So he's back with the worldwide leader, the general, ESPNU, Lowell Galindo, and Greg Olson called it last night. And then tonight it'll be back to streaming. I don't know what broadcasters A&M uses at home. Of course, you can listen to it with Derek and Stewart tonight. First pitch at 7 on SEC Network Plus. Matt Becker, a lefty, senior, returns to the mound. 2-2 with a 6.19 ERA, 14 walks, 46 strikeouts. And then for A&M, Justin Lampkin, he's also a lefty, 2-3 with a 3.66 ERA, 11 walks, 52 strikeouts, 46.2 innings pitched. Saturday is still a TBA for the Gamecocks, but at this point, every win is important if you want to turn it around and go to the NCAA tournament. I've said a couple times what's crazy about it is everybody's kind of I think everybody kind of looked toward the Ole Miss series next weekend and said, "Wow, the Gamecocks." That's a chance to kind of turn it around. But Ole Miss is ranked in the top 10. And then after that, you got to go to Kentucky, and that's been a house of horrors for the Gamecocks. One potential series of reprieve would be Florida, which is the next weekend, May 2nd through 4th. My wife's birthday is on May 3rd, so that would be good. Florida's struggling. They're a struggling bunch right now, but they got Missouri this weekend. Why couldn't the Gamecocks have Missouri? What happened to they've been on the schedule most of the years, but anyway, I guess it get replaced with Oklahoma. At Auburn, not fun. Then a good Winthrop team that Carolina played earlier this year comes back to Columbia for the midweek before the season ender against LSU. It's going to be very sad if Carolina's sitting there with no hope. And Palminary's excellent former team comes in to Founders Park for the end of his first season. The hope, just when you kind of in your mind envision how that sets up, is that not a miracle, but maybe things just straighten themselves out. But I don't know. We've talked enough about baseball the last couple of days here and on the show. I think we dedicated most of the show to it. Let's just roll to other things, right? But anyway, it's a big softball thing this weekend. Gamecock sports fans in general in South Carolina, it's a nice weekend. It's always a nice weekend. So anywho, yesterday there was football news kind of out of nowhere. Let's just be honest about that. That was not Shane Beamer kind of alluded to maybe picking up an edge in the portal, or I kind of speculated about it on the Big Spur that maybe this is something they consider. That's what I was told. And then Demon Clowney, Jadavion's cousin, lo and behold, he signs with South Carolina. So I had a special video on that, like we call it the special. If there's breaking news, it's up here on the YouTube channel, also on the podcast stream. You'll get that where I break it down completely. Not going to go back and do that again with him specifically, other than to say I believe it's a depth piece. I don't let the name's going to kind of get people excited, and I get it. And I think there's some things there tool wise, that he could come in and give them some snaps and play. Hasn't happened for him in his career, despite his 4-star rating and last name and all that, because he was really a pretty raw prospect coming out of Baltimore. And so, we've seen players come to this program like Kyle Kennard that have had good, not great production, like at Georgia Tech, and then boom, he blows up. We've seen players come to this program and get better in a short amount of time. And for him to play a lot next year and to make a big impact, he's going to have to, they're going to have to get him up to speed. He does have SEC experience. He was at Ole Miss first couple of years, so it's not like he doesn't has never stepped on the field. He's always been on the lower level, which in some cases is just fine. I mean, the player's a player. It doesn't matter most of the time where they play. But it when you talk about has he been in the SEC, he kind of understands how it all sets up. He's not going to walk out on the field and have to adjust to the environments or anything like that. So that's a positive to me. I give me the guy from whatever school that's just a baller that the scouts are looking at. I don't care if he plays in front of 88 people. Give me that guy. But I don't know if that guy's out there or if that guy's a guy that would want to come to Carolina or whatever. There's a lot of factors at play. But I think Clowney, getting him back in, that's pretty solid. So how does that? Let's reset the edge. Let's reset the defensive line, folks, because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of talk about it, and I just want to tell you right now. I've talked to people that were at the scrimmage that I trust that have nailed most things, not everything. Not everybody does. You can watch this game, this sport of football that we all love, and we can, you can come back with 10 different opinions. And 4 of them you can look at in hindsight and go, what were you thinking? And that's for me, you, coaches, analysts, scouts, people that get paid well to know what they're talking about by NFL franchises. I mean, go talk to some NFL scouts or talk to somebody that talks to a lot of NFL scouts, chatter with those folks and so what are they saying? And then take the individual opinions, and they're just like nut job level different. They're not and there's some consensus, but I guarantee you, I mean, you see it before the draft every year because Johnny Sportswriter that knows has a buddy, by the way, that works for the Cleveland Browns. He's getting fed something, and you never know what that means. I mean, they may downplay the player. And I hope that never comes in college sports, but it probably will. You'll probably see a guy drop in the rankings and then sign with a blue blood and be a freshman All-American based on a lot of feedback from a school that's trying to maybe get him, scare some teams off. It's crazy. But it happens a lot in the NFL because you're, angling for position and you're trying to scare other franchises off. But then you're also honestly, you have scouts that really don't like the guy. I don't like him. I like that. I like this guy better. Blah, blah, blah. You pick them apart, whatever. And so when you're watching football, especially with a scrimmage or trying to evaluate or anything, you're going to come back with a lot of different opinions. And that's just the fact. So what you want to do is kind of put trust in the people when you're like me, and I didn't get to see it for myself. Nobody did in my position, but you want to kind of put the trust in the people that have a track record, and that you think back. Oh, this guy told me this. Well, this worked out. This worked out. This didn't, but this worked out. Blah blah blah. Okay, and so I've talked to like 4 different people that have good track records, and they've all universally told me that Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy is awesome, or has been awesome in practice. Let's back up, because you say he's awesome. And then all of a sudden, we get to the Virginia Tech game and he stinks because maybe the offensive line stinks. Please God, say a prayer. I don't, there's no reason for them to stink this year as long as there's no catastrophic injuries and things like that. But, maybe he stinks, so I don't want to say he's awesome, but he's been awesome in practice. And he looks like the guy that maybe a lot of those scouts I was talking about saw when he was coming out of high school. I don't know why Alexa pops on sometimes when I'm recording. Maybe it's my booming voice. Who knows? But look, so when you have that kind of intel and you have Markel Goodwine back, and then you think about Xavion Hardy, and his issues are not that he's just a guy that's going to have to develop as a player. He has to kind of learn, techniques and stuff like that. Most great athletes, and he is, get that with reps. It's all like physical, man. It's all like I was in a junior college. There's no nutrition program there. I mean, I think they get a cafeteria or something, but man, those guys are grabbing a sack from Wendy's or whatever. Um, and it's just not as compatible when you're talking about transfers in today's high level college football, where you're not only training year round, you're dieting. I don't want to say dieting like these guys are, popping in the lean cuisine. They have a nutrition, so they have a meal plan that's tailor made specific for them to get their body where it needs to be to play football. They didn't have any of that at East Mississippi and Scuba, Mississippi. And it's a good program out there. They care about those kids and they develop them. But man, I mean, COVID put a big hole in junior college football because they mostly all canceled it. And then on top of that, you had the transfer portal and NIL. And so a lot of the players you probably would have gone to JUCO and get if you're Power Five, they're limited because guess what? For this reason, like with Hardy, for this reason, okay, you'd rather have a group of 5 guy because they may not have as nice of a facility as Carolina. They may not have, an assistant strength coach that used to be the strength coach for NFL franchises and Luke Day and, Derek Moore there to encourage you and help you move forward and be a sounding board. I mean, those are all tremendous resources. We don't talk about this enough because we talk about NIL all the time. You don't have a nutritionist like Yuri. Yimmy. I knew I was going to get that wrong. Came from the Cubs. And the person he replaced, Kristen, was really good too. This guy's kind of been next level. And you can kind of see it when you look at like Dylan Stewart and others, not just Dylan. Dylan's picture was out there. The before and after, Dylan came in January. Again, coming from a high school program, not a whole lot of nutrition. And I've been to Friendship Collegiate Academy, and maybe they've added some facilities because they're a good program and they produced NFL players. But I went there to see Eddie Goldman back in the day in D.C. And it's not, they don't have a lot of, big facilities and stuff, So but Dylan, big, strong kid, lifted weights, worked out, wasn't out of shape, wasn't his fault. And you look at the before and after, and he worked. And Xavion, I've heard nothing to indicate he's not working. Now, it's going to be up to him. These types of things largely are up to him. But with that being the issue, I see some panic about, oh, he's not ready. Well, it's April. You don't need him ready right now. You need him to get as many reps as he can and get his ass kicked and screw up and get blocked and get mad and then work even harder. Who cares? Because one thing that's not in question is that Xavion Hardy is probably the best athlete in that room. And he's 6'5", 300. He's a big, long-armed monster. And look, there's no guarantee. And because I mentioned all that, but you're dealing with, biology and God and everything else. That's impossible. Nobody can say for sure that will happen. But we are talking, if you assume, and I do, or project that Goodwine and Brownlow-Dindy will be your starters, you're talking about your second team guy. And yeah, the second team guy is going to play a lot. But what you have to ask yourself is, can Xavion Hardy, right now, assuming, let's just play this game. Would you like to play a game? I was going to save this for the show, but, there's just kind of a lot of unnecessary over concern. Every position's a concern right now. And I know everybody's kind of on edge because, shoot, you had expectations in men's basketball, didn't work out. Expectations, at least, to be like the baseline standard of the program, which is to be a regional team, and it's not working out. And so, heck, I don't. It may be good that maybe people are lowering expectations of football a bit because there's a lot of teams that want to break through that don't handle expectations. We've talked about that. We'll talk about in the offseason. Back to the game, the question. So you got to ask yourself, can Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy be as good as TJ Sanders? That's a long trip to make for a guy that has not played a whole lot. Is he as talented as TJ Sanders? Yeah, I think so. I think just raw talent. Remember, it's a talent maximization game. When you talk about talent, it's what he could be, right? So is he the guy that replaces TJ? Yes. Would you rather have TJ back? Absolutely. TJ Sanders had an outstanding season this past year. One of the best is for a D tackle South Carolina's had since Javon Kinlaw. You got to go back further than that. Just D tackle. Really, really came on his last year to the point where, there were whispers he was on the pro radar or whatever, but I don't think that they necessarily last offseason when you looked ahead 2 years and you go, oh, well, TJ will be gone. Yeah, you didn't know. All those guys, TJ, Tonka, Boogie, all inconsistent before last season, which is what they're getting coached up and developed. So that's what you got to ask yourself. I would probably say, at that spot, that's going to be hard, but athletically, talent-wise, you got a guy there. And look, that's everybody's situation. You don't replace a stud that's NFL ready, that's ready to go to the NFL, with a guy in college football that's NFL ready. Nobody has that luxury, really. Even in Alabama under Saban, they had guys that hadn't played a whole lot. Well, now it's time to play. It's still college football, not the NFL where it's like, well, there's not a ton of development that goes on in the NFL. There are guys that do get better. There's not a ton of development there. College football's still developmental. And so you can't just look and go, well, we're going to suck because this former 5-star that is explosive and is huge and is finally healthy and in a good spot is replacing our guy that's probably going to be a second-round draft pick. That's not how good programs look at things. And, if you want to be a good program, you got to look at it different. So then you got to ask yourself, so could Monkel Goodwine be Tonka Hemingway? He's a lot different. Tonka is I don't want to say a finesse defensive tackle, but he's kind of a guy that could play end in a 3-4 in the NFL. Big play guy, super athletic on the inside. There's other players that could probably fit his mold athletically, but can Monkel be as productive? He's got to take a step, but can he? Yeah. I mean, I think, and when I say production, I'm talking about can he get the passer, that kind of thing. Monkel's a lot different. So where's the trade-off there? Is Monkel a little bit better at stuffing the run and not getting off blocks and Tonka, whereas he's probably not going to scoop and score and run off and leave everybody? Probably that. But can he play that position as a starter? Yes. Also, let me remind everyone, they're not done at defensive tackle. So you don't know who they're going to go get. And I feel confident they'll get somebody that will make people breathe a sigh of relief. So that's the wild card, but we're not going to deal with wild cards or hypotheticals. It's all hypothetical, but we're not going to deal with guys that aren't here that they could get, that kind of. We're just going to look at what it is now. And then with Xavier Hardy, you're basically saying, can he be as good as Boogie Huntley by the time August rolls around? I say yes. Boogie played his best football of his career last year, and was good. But can Hardy get to that level? Yes. DeAndre Jules is the kind of the reverse wild card because they missed him. He was tearing it up and got injured and then came back and played a little. So who would that be? That'd be Nick Barrett. Nick Barrett can definitely be as productive as Jules post injury. Jules was very productive before the injury, and I'll remind everybody that the 6 game win streak at the end of the year was post Jules injury. You have Rondarius Porter, who was already taking snaps. They love the kid. He's going to take some snaps as well. Caleb Williams, true freshman, is hurt. I think he's headed for a red shirt. Same with Christian Ingram. So you look kind of down the ways, and it's Devontae Miles. Devontae Miles, I don't know why this is controversial. Mississippi State and Georgia wanted the guy. I don't know why everybody's hung up on he didn't start at Bowling Green. Again, maybe all these, maybe Travian Robertson and Clayton White and Shane Beamer and Darren Usher and Mississippi State's personnel people and UG, maybe they're all wrong. Maybe they're all wrong. Because when I've watched his film, he does some things that you go, holy crap, for a big guy. That's good. But and we asked Darren Usher about this on the show. I didn't, I haven't seen him take on a 600 pounds of beef double team on the inside. And, it's not that I don't think I just have not been able to locate that film where I'm like, yeah, but he's a versatile guy, very athletic. Certainly when you're talking about 5th or 6th guy, maybe 7th, there you go. And look, I'm not excusing the situation at D tackle. They kind of ran into it 0 for 4, with 2022. Had a coaching change in 23 where the new guy Travian comes in middle of midstream. You lose all those kids to Georgia. Xavier McLeod gets kicked off the team. He's at Georgia now. It's tough. It's going to be tough this cycle. And that kind of gets to my next topic here on a Friday, because, a lot of the big targets are in North Carolina. And that's a spot where Carolina has to kind of reestablish itself. My next topic, meaning on the show later today. So, the brownlow-dindy information is the nugget there. Don't listen to anything else about Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy at this point, other than he's doing very, very well and looks like a dude. You hear that phrase all the time. He's a dude. I mean, it's kind of crazy because in football, all of a sudden that word "dude" is trickled down. He's a dude, and now it's brah. The younger people say bro, instead of dude. But I still say dude because I guess I'm an old Gen Xer. Sounds sad to say we're old, but anyway, he's a dude. So all you younger folks out there, millennials and Gen Zers and folks that listen, and there are many of you, and I appreciate you. And I'm not. I enjoy communicating with those folks, but I've kind of had to learn some new words and things like that. But yeah, so I call everybody dude, but he's a dude. So that's a football term now. He's a dude. It means he's good. And we've all liked Markel Goodwin, and I'm going to say this too, before people kind of get it twisted or not twisted, but I guess get confused. So the path for Monkel Goodwin, Alabama, didn't play a whole lot, came to Carolina and was pretty solid. And this may be why people are a little hesitant with Brownlow-Dindy. Because Monkel was good last year. He finally was playing. But let's be honest, he was a rotational guy that, had some work to do to be a starter. And he's putting in that work, and the hope is play the best ball the senior year. I don't know if he'll ever, I guess a top 100 prospect is considered for top 3-round draft pick. Not sure that he's going to get there, but can he be a valuable starter in the SEC for the University of South Carolina in 2025? Absolutely. Can be productive, yes. But I think some people in their mind, because Brownlow-Dindy, highly recruited guy, goes to a school that was in the former SEC West, doesn't play. Okay, you're getting the same guy. You're not getting the same guy. There is a fundamental difference athletically, upside wise, height, weight, agility, speed, explosiveness, just the whole thing. There's a difference between Monkel Goodwine and Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy. There just is. Now, can they both be really good, productive players? Yeah, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you're scouting those two guys and you're evaluating those two guys individually, there is a difference. And that's all I got to say about that. So keep that in mind. Every player's different, They don't follow the same path. We talked about JUCOs earlier. Big difference between Javon Kinlaw and Elijah Davis, right? Big difference. So there we go. But yeah, the next topic, we're going to talk on the show today, Inside the Gamecocks, the show with Mad Dog and myself about recruiting in Charlotte and sort of some of the top prospects. Carolina lost Rodney Dunham yesterday to Notre Dame, but there's some intel on some of the other guys. So I reset the tackle spot to get to the edge spot, and then we'll conclude. We'll conclude with this, with Demon Clowney coming in. I again, it's a rotational position. It's great to be able to rotate. That's a luxury and a necessity and insurance all at the same time. One of the reasons you take an edge after Wendell Gregory's out and Jaylen Brown's up in the air, and I wish I could sit here and tell you that Jaylen Brown he'll be fine. And I don't know that. I don't know that he won't be fine. And people are like, well, why don't you know? How about college football fans? The sneaky thing about them, they want to know everything about everybody's health right away. And I get it, man. I love the passion. I do. Sometimes though, you have an injury, and this, I mentioned this. It happened with Marquis Anderson his freshman year. He's playing and practicing. He's got a nagging injury or whatever. And then finally they arrived at the conclusion that they have to shut him down, and then he's got to have surgery. So that's the thing with Jaylen. They just don't know. And then people will speculate what part of the body is whatever. Blah, blah, blah. You can't do this because somebody that knows somebody that did, don't do that. I'm telling you the truth. I'm not trying to hide it. Obviously, it's up in the air. I don't know that they signed Clowney otherwise. Yeah, it's up in there, but I'm not trying to hide it or let you down slowly. That kind of thing. It's just how it is right now. I personally have my doubts. I'll be honest. I have my doubts. And I don't think, but they're not trying to be coy. This is not one of those things where should be back, out for 2 years. We've heard injury reports like that. But yeah, so there was a need there. So take Jaylen Brown, put him in, off to the side, because we're not, you can't really say for sure. And then Wendell Gregory walked out the door for whatever reason. Still haven't gotten an answer on that. Don't know if it's going to happen. And every year in the portal, there are gut punching losses, losses where you look back and go, that guy, or most of the time, last year, say what you want about Juice Wells. He'd have been a lot better off had he stayed at Carolina, and would have really helped the team. But, that was tough. Marshawn Lloyd, 2023 was tough. Jaheim Bell, Carolina had good tight ends that year. But there's been some that hurt, that smart a little bit. And it created a perception for a while that, South Carolina's just going to lose these players. And that's ended, has it not? But every year there is a guy, and no exceptions, that you kind of think, man, I like that recruit, or I like that player. He's got upside, or he's doing well. I'm excited about his future. And that's me, you, everybody that's ultimately going to get in the portal. Omega Blake was an example of that. I thought he, give him a year and he'll be really good. He's already productive. And so it happens, but it's unfortunate when it happens in the middle of spring practice. And I went off on this whole Nico, Tennessee thing yesterday on the show. I guess there's reports they're negotiating. First of all, whoever the hell leaked that is an idiot. I mean, I don't know who you are that leaked that to publicly. You're an idiot, especially if are at Tennessee or at Nico's camp. I mean, that should never be public. Second, this shouldn't be going on right now. The time to do that is in the crazy off season, December, whatever. Especially if you're supposed to be the leader of the team. But it happens. And so my point with Wendell is it's unfortunate, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen everywhere. You can have the best culture in the world, the best coach in the world, the best fans in the world. You can have a team that's going to go play for the national title. And at the end of the day, there are going to be guys that want something new. And that's just how it is. And they're free to do it no matter what, no matter how much money you paid them in NIL-wise before, no matter how much time you've invested in them, no matter how much better they've gotten under your watch, they can go seek whatever and go into whatever situation they want. And I'm not saying Wendell made a bad decision. There's a guy came in as a linebacker, got his position got changed. That's always something with a lot of players that, when the position changes, some take to it and love it. Some are like, this isn't for me. I want to go play linebacker somewhere, whatever. But because that happened, and then you have the Brown situation, you're down 2. And so when you look at it, you've got Dylan Stewart, and obviously he's Dylan Stewart. Brian Thomas Jr. on the other side, I think the hope was, Brown could be good enough to be a starter over there, and you slide him inside on passing downs where he's going to be good. And then you play, Brian Thomas Jr. is in the rotation, and he's a pass rusher, which is what his strength is. But you have him over there. I've just convinced myself he's going to start because they love him, and that's cool. Hopefully, 6'2", 254, not the biggest guy, but hopefully he makes some plays opposite Stewart. And then after that, you got Desmond Umazulu and Jatius Gear, who both those guys were guys to get excited about when they came to Carolina. There's been injuries. Desmond's a guy that I don't necessarily understand why people are like, he hadn't done anything. Well, he wasn't supposed to. He's played. It's not like he's inexperienced, and he can be a rotational guy. But man, you look at after that, without Clowney, and it's Anthony Addison and Joquavius Dodd. Now, I'm going to say this about those two. I don't want you folks to think those guys aren't good. Quite the contrary. But they're just like, they're 2 in-state DNs that are going to have bright futures. But Addison, their deals are kind of the opposite. Dodd is big and physical. He's got the size. But, kind of like, who do we want to talk? Devin Taylor's the guy that's always brought up in this situation. Needs a redshirt year. As a player, needs a redshirt year. Already came a long way in high school, but needs a redshirt year. Kind of like Desmond Umazulu. Desmond was a guy, got better senior year in high school, but as a player, not a prospect, needs his senior year. Anthony Addison already is a really good player, but he's 6'3", 230. And that's gaining some weight and putting some size on since he's been at Carolina. He's going to be a hell of a player. But right now, are you going to depend on those guys? I don't know. I don't know. Not at Edge. And I don't know that Carolina, I mentioned Tonka Hemingway earlier, and Tonka's different. And outside of maybe Devontae Miles, you don't have a tackle that I think you'd slide out to Edge in a 3-man front. And then you don't have an edge, that makes sense down in and down out playing that. You're not going to put Dylan Stewart down there in a 3-man front unless it's some exotic look. So that's not really an option. You do have some good linebackers. I've heard they're very fast. Uncle Runkle, Fred Johnson, Sean Murphy, but I don't know they have the line pieces to do it. So, because you would think, well, if you're light on edge and you maybe just play 3-man, but I don't know. I mean, it's gonna be mixed in. Don't get me wrong. Clayton White will run some of that at least every game, and in certain looks, it depends. It's part of the defense, but like they did in 2023, where they primarily went to that look and it saved the season, or saved, not to say it saved the season, but the defense got significantly better, right? More competitive. I don't know that that'll happen. And so with Clowney in there now, rotational guy, don't worry. It's not time to panic about the defensive line. I wanted to make that clear. Give you the info on Brownlow-Dindy. I don't care who else you hear anything from. This, that, and the other out there. Not talking necessarily about media or people on websites or anything like that, but your buddies, you tell them. Gabriel Brownlow-Dindy is going to be good. So that's what I know about that. All right, we'll be along with the show in the morning show later today. Hope everyone has a wonderful weekend. I know this is getting up a little late today, but it was Friday, so I slept in a little bit. But have a wonderful weekend. I'll be back Monday with coffee, of course, along with any special, with any breaking news. Log on to thebigspur.com. Check that out. Enjoy the Masters, Palmetto Golf and Belts, palmettogolfing.com. I had some people buy some stuff, posted on the Big Spur about it. Freaky fast delivery. Get in the mood. Get those belts. A good price. palmettogolfing.com, a sponsor of coffee, the Big Spur, the show, all that good stuff. JC Shurburtt out. Have a happy weekend, everyone. Holla at you soon.